I don't want anyone to miss anything. You did tell this amazing Andy Kaufman story.
Well, let's tell it again.
We just want to. Should we go into that first, and then we'll dive back into your history a little bit?
Whatever you want to do.
Okay. I said Bob Zmuda has been talking.
He was like Andy Kaufman's what?
Right-hand man?
Right-hand man, mentor, partner, whatever.
And he's been saying recently in some interviews, I think just kind of grazing by it that Memphis went to Andy and said, we want you for this part, or we want you to be in the wrestling. And Andy was like, okay, you're right, wrong. And Jimmy Hart, sometimes I'm like, oh, I don't know if I'm going to get real stories out of Jimmy, when I talk to him, because he's sometimes plugged into that WWE machine.
Politically correct.
Right, politically correct. So you're wondering, what are you really going to get out of Jimmy? And I start talking to him a little bit about Andy Kaufman. He just sits down and he's telling me these real stories. Yeah. And he's like, Andy and Bill were next to each other, and this is kind of how the deal went with Bill Apter, and Bill Apter kind of set this whole thing up. Yeah. And so the minute I asked you to be on here, I was like, we got to tell the story.
So the real story, which is Bill Zemi wrote a book called Lost in the Funhouse, and there's I'm credited with the Andy Kaufman story. Jerry Lawler, in his book, starts a whole chapter off that Bill Apter is a short, balding Jewish guy who does an amazing impression of Jerry Lewis, and that sometimes the line we cross is so real that he becomes Lewis. So why he said that, I have no idea. Actually, you see, no idea, sir. Actually.
What's fun is that you are a man of impressions.
I do a lot of impressions, and Jerry was probably one of my biggies when I was a little
Jerry
kid.
Lawler?
Jerry Lewis. Yeah, that's good.
But so you're the man who loves doing impressions.
Oh, yeah.
And then here's Andy Kaufman.
So now, the story on this is Andy Kaufman was a big wrestling fan, and he used to come to the Backstage at Madison Square Garden back when Vince Sr. ran everything. And Vince Sr. was not into entertainment like his son is. I mean, totally very NWA, even though it was WWF, very NWA type of values. It's that we're not comedy, we are not singing, we're not dancing, we are professional wrestling. So he came backstage at the Garden one night, and everybody was enamored. How he got backstage, I don't know. Probably the guys downstairs, the security guys, like, oh my God, it's Andy Kaufman, Latka.
Just imagine Andy's like a fan, and probably a fan like waving to the wrestlers as they come in.
One of the worst parts, one thing we didn't talk about is, and remind me after I tell the story about how I got in trouble in my office because of Andy Kaufman. But so he'd come backstage, and we became friendly. And Vince McMahon Sr.
And he came up to you, right?
Yeah, he knew who I was because my picture was in the magazine. He remembered that I took the heart punch from Stan Stasiak. So that was like, oh, what was it like? And I'm like, wow, he really believes. He really believes. So, and if he didn't, he was kayfabing everybody else.
Respecting me.
Yes, even. Very respectful. Very respectful. So Vince McMahon Sr. saw me talking to him for a long time, walking him around, introducing him to the wrestlers, and they were all.
Was there any wrestlers he was really happy to meet?
Everybody. Loved it. Everybody. So, he was a nice kid from Long Island. Come in. This is the Garden. Come on. It's like, it's like the palace for a song and dance person. So Vince McMahon Sr. called me over. I see him with the kind of red face and the finger waving me over there, not the middle one. Right. He says, who is that guy? I said, it's Andy Kaufman. He's a big star. Just get that son of a bitch out of here. I don't want him backstage here. I'm like, well, this is like, I don't care. So I told Andy, I said, they're doing really, and big fuss backstage now because he was a big fan of Fred Blassie's, and Blassie loved him, and Blassie would tell Vince, the guy's staying back here. There's a lot of heat going back and forth because they all loved Andy, all the wrestlers. They all wanted to be, maybe they can get on Taxi. Who knows? So I got to become friends with him. And it got to the point where when I was doing photo studio stuff with people like Eddie Gilbert and the late, great Kurt Hennig and Larry Hennig. So he started coming to the photo session. So one night after a garden show, after he was thrown out but not thrown out, McMahon just said, "Get that son of a bitch out of here," but he hung out. Anyway, I said, "Do you want to go?" He said, "Do you want to go somewhere?" I said, he asked me where I live. I said, "In Queens." He said, "Well, you want to go back to your house? Can we talk about wrestling?" I said, "I live in an apartment in Queens." I said, well, let's get a taxi. And he said, no. He said, "We'll take the subway." I said, "You're the guy, Lotka, on taxi." So I'm on the subway with Lotka, and people are coming over to him.
Because he wants to save the money, or he wants to...
Don't know. He just was Andy Kaufman. I opened the door of the apartment. I was living at that time with a Australian girl wrestler by the name of Susan Sexton. Suzanne.
And that's why she was always in the PWI magazines.
No, well, PWI wasn't invented.
Oh,
at that
sorry.
point.
She was always in the
wrestler and inside. But that wasn't because of me. It was Stanley Weston, my mentor, the publisher, was enamored with her breasts. Ann Casey was another one that was in there all the time with her leopard.
But you,
suit.
At the end...
It was nice to know that he liked women.
Right. But at the end, Playboy Billy, he...
Actually, she and I had a platonic relationship. I died because she had an incredible body, and I'm a guy. But anyway, I walked in, and she said, "Hey, how you doing?" to him, very casual. She knew who he was, but she was, everything with her was just kind of matter-of-factly, and everything was the F-bomb. We used to go to a diner every night. She'd call me, "What time are we going to the fucking diner? We're taking the fucking train today." She helped nickname my best friend fucking Barry because he fucked everything up. She used to call him FB. So Andy Kaufman is in the apartment, and we're talking about wrestling. And she's sitting on the couch with us, and she looks at him. She says, "Oh, you can talk about fucking wrestling." Gets up, walks into her room. We had I slept in the living room. We had a pull-out bed, and she paid rent for the bedroom. And she put on her headphones, Gabba Gabba Hey, some Ramones. DDT did a job on me. Anyway, I was listening to Andy Williams records. She got me into the Ramones. So we started talking how much she wanted to be Nature Boy Buddy Rogers. He really wanted to be Buddy Rogers. And I do I do wrestling imitations. So I said, "Well, something, Andy." And I eventually hooked him up with and introduced him to, actually we called Buddy Rogers that night. I never even...
Really?
Yeah, this just came out. And
you had that relationship with Buddy Rogers?
Yeah.
Andy must have loved you.
Oh, he did.
Yeah.
He did. So now I tell him about Jerry Lawler in Memphis. I said, "This promotion down in..." And I said, "Have you ever heard of him?" He says, "Oh, yeah, in your magazines." And... I said, "Let's call Jerry Lawler." He says, "You have his phone number?" I said, "Yeah." Very innocent, Dan. He says, 1 o'clock in the morning, won't he be asleep? I said, "He's a wrestler. He will always answer the phone. He's a wrestler."
And
Could be a booking. Yeah.
Could be a booking.
So I called Jerry Lawler. He says, "You got Andy Kaufman, the guy from Taxi, in your little roach-infested apartment there in Queens?" I said, "Yeah," and put him on the phone. And as they say, the rest is history. That's what started it out.
Now, in the movie Man on the Moon, your part wasn't played by
No. I did my part. Andy Kaufman, Jim Carrey, who did such a great,
amazing,
scary, great job as Andy Kaufman. He looks at his girlfriend. He says, "Let's go to Memphis, Tennessee." And she says, "Why?" He says, "That's the wrestling capital of the world." So that was Hollywood, because of course New York was the wrestling capital of the world, or Tokyo.
Now that
would have been great had Japan gotten the Andy Kaufman, Ratka.
Oh Jesus! Yes, now was that big business for the magazine industry? Like, did it scratch your back also, or were you just happy to help a friend?
It scratched my back with Jerry Lawler. I wasn't allowed to accept gifts, and he said, "What can I give you?" I said, "Well, I'm getting married pretty soon." I said, "We need a car," so he wrote out a check, sent it in the mail to my wife-to-be for $500, and said, "I can't believe you don't have a car." And
is that what a car would cost?
No, it was just to help us out. I think I said I was like $500 too. And I've maintained a great friendship. There were a couple of rocky times with Jerry Lawler over some other things that happened between he and I, but that was all. I talked to him all the time.
And you were there for the Letterman thing. Now that's what.
Yeah, I actually got in touch with the Letterman people. Yeah.
So you said, "Hey." What do you mean?
Well, they knew what had happened with this. So I was being proactive. I called the Letterman people, and I had a friend, what was his name? Last name was Tashman. I forgot Larry Tashman, another Irish kid. Larry O. Tashman.
Hey.
And he got the ear of the Letterman people, and that's how that whole Letterman incident happened.
And you were back there taking pictures.
Yeah, behind the cameras, they let me do it. Craig Peters, who was also one of the PWIers there, or wrestler or Inside Wrestling, he was real, and he still is.
And I said the nowadays in the age of wrestling and these actors coming in, and even The Rock, who left professional wrestling and now has come back for a 1, 2.
He left sports entertainment.
Sorry, he left sports entertainment.
All right.
For
wrestling trademark.
For 1 to 2, 3 shows or whatever, and and now comes back, and some of the wrestlers are like, well, look at this guy, he's coming, back from acting. Some of the wrestlers get a little salty. Were the boys?
We're working 6 nights a week, and this guy comes back and makes the payoff we should be getting.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of guys resent that. Sure.
For Andy?
Sure. No, not from Andy Kaufman. No, that I'm talking about today.
Oh,
we're
sure.
talking about like The Rock. You were talking
Right.
about. Well, for Andy Kaufman, he helped put Memphis on a national. On a worldwide scale, because there was news coverage everywhere. There was actual, even in New York, there was the guy and the people from Taxi hated this because he kayfabed every one of them. He told them it was all. And I met Judd Hirsch probably. This is after Andy died. I met Judd Hirsch. He was doing a show off Broadway, and I just wanted to meet him. And I hung out in the alleyway over. I was a stage door Johnny growing up, and I introduced myself. He says, "You know what?" He says, "We were all very against that. We asked him not to do it." He says, "I don't dislike you because you helped him reach his dream, but we really didn't like that because he told us everything was real all the time, and it disrupted the set because Andy was way out there, and when he didn't want to do things and he wanted to concentrate on the wrestling stuff, that's what he did."
And walking around back with the brace on.
Probably, yeah, with the neck brace.
Yeah.
Sure.
So,
sure.
but it was making money for Memphis. The Memphis wrestlers.
Oh, they loved it.
They loved it.
They were touching a guy that was a worldwide TV star.
Right. In Memphis, Tennessee, and it's not like those New York wrestlers. I'm sure Bruno and Billy Graham, those guys were mingling with the stars all the time, but these guys are in Memphis, right?
Well, Bruno's guy, of course, was Jilly Rizzo, who owned the restaurant Jilly's, who was Frank Sinatra's best friend. And Bruno got to meet Frank Sinatra.
He's hanging out with Frank Sinatra.
Do I get to do my Bruno imitation?
Please.
Well, you got to ask me a question.
What was it like not wrestling Andy Kaufman? Do you wish Andy Kaufman was...
This doggone guy comes to the wrestling, okay? And he says to me, Bruno, Bruno, I want to be a wrestler. And I said to him, do you know something that this McMahon guy took this guy... That's as far
I
as
love it. You said McMahon... He had one regret in wrestling. That
well, I don't know if it's one regret. But Vince Jr. had told a confidant of mine that's the one angle that he wished he would have done. Yeah.
And so, it must have been great business.
It was great business, and I made my wife made $500 for a car, and she's still working, and I still work.
Hey, it's Colt. Listen to the rest of this episode, along with brand new episodes every single Thursday. Audio stories about the world of professional wrestling on WeLoveColt.com and on iTunes, or follow me on Twitter @ColtCabana. I appreciate your support. Thanks.